When I got home that night, the lights in the kitchen were still on, but the house felt too quiet. No clattering dishes, no low hum of Mason's voice from the dining table. I dropped my overnight bag by the door and scanned the hallway. His prep classes should have been in full swing by now. I'm Owen Brandt. I'm 51 years old and I live just outside Tucson, Arizona. I fly freight routes, mostly domestic, sometimes Canada. It's a job with rhythm, long hours, strict schedules, but lately something's been throwing me off. That something is my son. I found Mason in the den, sprawled on the couch, gaming headset on, eyes fixed on a screen that clearly had nothing to do with school. "You're supposed to be in your virtual class," I said. He flinched slightly but didn't pause the game. "It's just review stuff. I already know it." I walked over and unplugged the console. "Hey," he barked, sitting up like I'd hit him. "We talked about this, Mason. You're already behind on those modules." He grabbed the controller and held it like a shield. "It's pointless. No one even checks if I'm there." "Except me," I said, lowering my voice. "I check." That should have meant something. It didn't. His eyes dropped to the carpet, shoulders tight. He wasn't defiant, he was just somewhere else. I left it there, walked to the kitchen, and found Serena on her laptop, 2 screens open, 1 earbud in, her cell phone lit up beside her. She didn't even glance up when I walked in. "He's skipping again," I said, pouring myself a glass of water. She sipped her wine and kept typing. "He's fine, Owen. He's a teenager. He's been skipping more than attending." "That's not fine. That's a problem." Serena let out a breath like I was boring her. "He's acting out. You think I didn't do the same at his age? You weren't hiding from your parents in your bedroom every night." She pulled out the earbud, finally turning toward me. "So what are you saying? That this is my fault?" "I'm saying we should at least talk to him. Something's going on." Serena rolled her eyes. "He'll grow out of it." And with that, she slid her earbud back in and resumed typing. Later that night, I knocked on Mason's door. No answer. I tried the knob, it was unlocked, and stepped in. He was hunched over his desk, parts of a drone spread out across the surface. Wires, a tiny circuit board, even the cracked casing. He looked up. "Didn't hear you knock." "I did knock," I said, easing down on the edge of his bed. "You working on the old XR model?" He nodded. "Trying to fix the stabilizer. It kept drifting left." "Can I help?" I asked. "Still remember a few things from when we used to fly them." His eyebrows lifted, just slightly, and for the first time in weeks, I saw something behind his eyes that wasn't guarded distance. "Sure," he said and handed me a screwdriver. We worked in silence for a while, the soft clicking of tools filling the room. After a few minutes, I asked, "So, why've you been skipping your sessions?" He hesitated, fingers tightening around a wire. "I just don't like people staring at me. Even through screens." "Why would they be staring?" He shrugged. "I don't know. They just do. You can talk to me, Maze. You know that, right?" He nodded but didn't say anything. I didn't push it. Just kept working the screws, reconnecting a broken wing. I figured if he couldn't talk now, maybe he'd talk later. But deep down, something told me it was worse than just school stress. Something was off. And whatever it was, Serena didn't want to see it. But I did. I was elbow deep in the underbelly of a grounded 737 at the hangar when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it, standard policy when you're inside a jet's guts, but something about the tone it buzzed with, that hard rapid rattle, made me wipe my hands and check. Unknown number. Local. "Hello?" I said, walking toward the exit for better reception. "Mr. Brandt?" a woman's voice asked. "Speaking. This is Deputy Lennox from the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Your son, Mason, he's been in an accident." Everything stopped. Time, breath, thought. Just stopped. "What?" I said, louder than I meant to. "We found him near the old Benson airfield. He was unconscious when EMS arrived. There was a wrecked electric scooter next to him." I couldn't hear the rest. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out her words. All I got was "transported to Banner Medical and you should come right away." The next 15 minutes were a blur of oil-stained coveralls, half-formed apologies to my boss, and white-knuckling the steering wheel through red lights. When I got to the ER, a nurse took me straight to a private waiting room, never a good sign. Dr. Haskins walked in a few minutes later. He was young, mid-30s maybe, with a too-clean lab coat and eyes that didn't quite meet mine. "We've stabilized Mason," he said, hands folded in front of him. "He sustained a serious head injury. We've placed him in a medically induced coma to reduce swelling." I stared at him. "A coma? It's temporary," he added quickly, "to let the brain rest and hopefully minimize damage." "But," that "but" was the loudest thing in the room. He hesitated. "The scans show diffuse axonal injury. That's not always a good sign, Mr. Brandt. We'll know more in the next 48 hours. I sank into the plastic chair. My hands shook. Was he wearing a helmet? I asked. The doctor shook his head. No. Looks like he was alone for several hours before someone spotted him. I rubbed my face, trying to catch my breath. Why would he even be out there? That's a dead part of town. No answer. Just more clinical silence. Serena showed up 3 hours later. She walked into the room like she'd come from a business lunch, not a hospital. Still wearing heels. Still on her phone. How bad is it? She asked, barely glancing at me. Serious, I said. Coma. Head trauma. Maybe worse. She nodded like it was a weather update. So what's the plan? What do you mean, what's the plan? We wait. We pray. That's the plan. She sat across from me and crossed her legs. I've already spoken to Dr. Haskins. He mentioned options. I frowned. Options. Her voice dropped to a cool whisper. End-of-life protocol. Just in case. I blinked at her, stunned. He's not even been in there half a day, and you're already planning his funeral? I'm being practical, she said, like it was noble. We have to prepare ourselves. I stood up and walked out. I couldn't sit there anymore. That was the moment something inside me shifted. The crash had broken something far bigger than Mason's skull. It had cracked open a truth I wasn't ready to look at. Something about all of this wasn't right. And my wife's cold reaction? That was the first real clue. The next morning, I sat beside Mason's bed, staring at his face. Pale, bruised, wires coming out of him like he'd been rewired by strangers. The machines beeped their steady rhythm, pretending they could do what I couldn't. Keep him safe. I didn't know how long I'd been sitting there when I noticed his right hand twitch slightly beneath the blanket. Just a flinch. I leaned in, heart racing, thinking maybe it was a sign. Maybe he was waking up. Instead, I saw a folded square of paper wedged between his fingers. Not hospital-issued. Not sterile. I carefully pried it loose and unfolded it with shaking hands. Dad, check the security feed. That was all it said. No punctuation. No date. Just those 6 words written in a shaky scrawl, barely legible. My mind started spinning. The garage. The side camera. The house had a feed. Not the obvious front porch camera, but the hidden one I installed 2 years ago when some kid keyed my truck in the driveway. Serena never cared about it. Forgot it existed. I shoved the note in my pocket and stood. I'll be back, Mason, I whispered. I raced home, pulled up the system on my laptop, tapped into the hidden garage angle. The file list loaded time-stamped clips from the last week. I scanned down to the day of the crash. There it was. Mid-afternoon, just before 3. I hit play. The feed showed Mason standing in the driveway, hands in his pockets, clearly upset. A minute later, Serena stepped into frame, wearing a gray pantsuit and heels. Same one she wore that night at the hospital. She walked right up to him, waving her hands. They were arguing. There was no audio, but Mason looked panicked. He kept stepping back. Serena stepped forward. She pointed toward something off-camera, toward the road, maybe. Mason shook his head, then looked over his shoulder, back at the scooter leaning against the wall. Serena took a step closer, said something that made him flinch, then turned and walked off like nothing happened. Mason stood there, frozen for a second. Then he grabbed the scooter and sped off down the street. I stared at the screen. It wasn't just a teenager going for a reckless ride. He was running. From her. My mouth was dry as sand. I copied the footage to a USB and drove straight back to the hospital. Dr. Haskins was finishing his rounds when I cornered him near the nurse's station. I need to talk to you, I said. He smiled faintly. Of course, Mr. Brandt. We're still monitoring Mason closely. No, not about that. I found something. A note. From Mason. His expression flickered. I pulled it from my pocket and handed it to him. And security footage from my house. Of him and my wife. Before the crash. His smile faded. Mr. Brandt, I understand you're under a lot of stress. But let's not jump to conclusions. Emotional strain can make us see things that... I'm not guessing. I saw it. He was scared. The doctor looked away, adjusting his stethoscope. Be careful, sir. You're making accusations without proof. Let's not create unnecessary complications. Unnecessary complications? My son was in a coma. My wife was already discussing pulling the plug. And now the doctor was telling me to drop it? I didn't say another word. Just turned and walked out. But I knew one thing. Mason hadn't crashed. He'd been running from something. Or someone. And I was going to find out exactly who. I didn't go home that night. I drove to Jace's place instead, Serena's brother. He lived in a ranch house in Oro Valley with blackout blinds, 7 security monitors, and a coffee pot that ran stronger than jet fuel. Jace wasn't close to his sister anymore, but he and I had always gotten along. He was blunt, antisocial, and brilliant, everything Serena pretended not to be. When he opened the door, he took one look at me and stepped aside without a word. I need your help, I said, walking in. Yeah, he said, already heading to his desk. I figured. I saw the news. Mason. He's in a coma, I said. But that's not all. I pulled out the USB and the note, setting both on his desk. Jace didn't ask questions. He just inserted the drive and started watching the footage. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Well, he muttered. That's not what I expected to see. I need to find out what she's hiding. She's hiding a lot, he said. Question is how much of it we can prove. We started digging that same night. Jace's setup wasn't just for show, he was a cybersecurity consultant for government contracts. Which meant he had access to things most people didn't. Things he wasn't technically supposed to use for personal reasons. But this wasn't personal. This was war. First, we tracked down Mason's smartwatch. It had been impounded by police after the crash, standard procedure when minors were found with digital devices in accident scenes. Jace made a few calls, pulled some strings, and the next day we had it. I decrypted everything, he said, handing me a pair of earbuds. You need to hear this. I sat in his living room, heart pounding, and hit play. Mason's voice came through, quiet and nervous. I heard Mom talking to someone last night. Some guy. I don't know his name, but he's from her company. She said Dad was a security risk. That he'd been asking questions. And they talked about removal. Not like firing. Like, gone. She told him not to worry about me. That I wouldn't be a problem. I stopped the recording. My chest was burning. He heard them, I whispered. He knew. There's more, Jace said, his voice grim. I hacked into her work laptop backups. I found some encrypted files. Offshore accounts. 3 of them. He turned the monitor toward me. On the screen were spreadsheets, boring to most people, but not to me. I knew numbers. I knew what they meant. Serena had been transferring money every month to a numbered account in the Cayman Islands. Right around the time Mason started acting distant. And look at this, Jay said, pulling up another file. New life insurance policy. On you. Signed just 2 months ago. I stared at it. It was all there, every breadcrumb. Mason had overheard a conversation. Something dangerous. Something involving Serena and a man named Ronan Vale, the head of security at her firm. They were planning to get rid of me. And Mason? He was collateral damage. She's dangerous, I said quietly. Jace looked at me, eyes cold. Then it's time we get dangerous too. I didn't know how yet. But I knew one thing. Serena made a mistake when she underestimated me. And she made an even bigger one when she went after my son. The next day, I returned to the hospital pretending everything was normal. Nodded to the front desk nurse, brought coffee in one hand, and tried not to let my stomach twist every time I walked through those sterile halls. Mason was still under, machines still breathing for him. But I wasn't just here to wait. I was watching now. Studying every visitor. Every glance. Every staff member who lingered a little too long. She approached me during shift change, a young nurse with curly dark hair and tired eyes. She looked like she'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. Mr. Brandt, she asked quietly. Yeah, I said, standing from the chair beside Mason's bed. She glanced around. Can we talk? Privately? We stepped into the hallway. She looked down the corridor, then back at me. Nervous. My name's Brielle, she said. I've been on night rotation with your son. I nodded, waiting. 2 nights ago, she said, lowering her voice, I caught someone in Mason's room. A woman. Said she was checking on him. She was holding a syringe. My chest went tight. Serena. Brielle nodded. She said it was a B12 injection. That Dr. Haskins had approved it. But when I double-checked his chart, there was no record of it. And Haskins wasn't even on site that night. I stared at her, stunned. She put something in his for? I asked. I don't know what it was. But after she left, I pulled a blood sample. Send it to the lab under a dummy code. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot. Potassium levels were elevated, way too elevated. Enough to be dangerous. I stared at the screen, trying to swallow the anger clawing up my throat. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Brielle hesitated. Because I know who you are. I blinked. Excuse me. You flew a humanitarian airlift into Honduras in 2017. Flood relief. My family was there. My uncle was airlifted out on your plane. I didn't remember her, but I remembered the mission. The heat. The chaos. The people crying in the hangar. My uncle never forgot your name, she said. Neither did I. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. I don't know what's going on, she said, but your wife is not just visiting. She's looking for something. Or trying to finish something. Can you help me? I asked. Yes, she said without hesitation. But we have to be careful. If she tries again, we won't get another warning. I leaned in, lowering my voice. Can we stage a transfer? Get Mason moved under a fake name. Hide him in plain sight. Brielle smiled grimly. We already do that with some DV cases. I can call in a favor. By the end of the day, she had everything ready. New ID band. Relocation order. A corner suite under a fake patient profile, Thomas Green. Observation only. We moved him at 3 a.m., no fanfare, no alarm. Brielle wheeled him herself. By sunrise, Serena would be showing up to an empty bed. And Mason? He'd finally be somewhere safe. For now. It took 4 days to build the trap. For days of watching Serena pace Mason's empty hospital room like she had misplaced a purse, not a son. For days of her hovering outside nurses' stations, making calls, pressing her cold smile into anyone who might talk. She didn't ask me where he'd gone. She didn't call me once. That told me everything I needed to know. So Jace and I set the hook. First, we faked a chart update on the hospital's internal system. It said Mason had regained partial consciousness and was stable enough to begin speaking. Brielle uploaded the file using one of the administrator's terminals after hours. Then we let the rumor float. Quietly. Like a dropped whisper. Jace spoofed an internal memo, just one sentence sent to Dr. Haskins's assistant. Patient Mason Brandt cleared for preliminary questioning, per legal protocol. We knew exactly who'd see it. By morning, we had eyes on the server room. I was in the visitor lounge, pretending to sip coffee. Jace was in the hallway with a janitor badge clipped to his chest, leaning on a mop like he worked there. The hospital's server room was just down the corridor, locked, but accessible to anyone with admin clearance. Right on cue, at 10:14 a.m., a man in a pressed gray suit and ID badge reading Ron Vale, IT security consultant, strolled into view. Ronan Vale? Serena's fixer. I stood as he passed, pretending to stretch while Jace pulled the janitor cart closer. He's going in, Jace muttered into his earpiece. I ducked into the maintenance closet where our portable monitoring rig was already running. 2 pin-sized cameras had been embedded into the overhead light panel in the server room 3 days earlier. On screen, we saw Ronan step inside, pull out a tablet and plug directly into the master terminal. Jace watched the feed closely. He's targeting the med archive servers. Is he deleting? Trying. He's bypassing login logs. That's top-tier stuff. I felt something twist in my chest. He wasn't just deleting Mason's files. He was scrubbing everything. Trying to make it like my son never existed. Jace hit the record button. For the next 7 minutes, we watched Ronan scroll through lines of code, navigate patient files, wipe metadata from digital imaging reports and EEG logs. All trace of Mason's presence in the hospital systematically erased. When he finished, he looked up at the camera. Not the security one. Ours. That's when I stepped out of the closet. You missed a file, I said. He turned. No shock. No panic. Just cold, polished arrogance. Captain Brandt, he said. This is a restricted area. I know, I said, holding up my phone. Good thing I've got unrestricted evidence. He smirked. Whatever you think you have, it's meaningless. You broke into a secure system. None of that holds up in court. Then let's try this, Jay said, stepping forward with a flash drive. Local backup. Encrypted, timestamped, and traceable to your device ID. And here's the fun part, you accessed it with Serena's credentials. Ronan's face twitched. Let me guess, I said. She sent you here. Told you Mason was going to talk. That he knew too much. You're making this bigger than it is, Ronan muttered. No, I said, stepping closer. You tried to erase my son. His jaw tightened. I could see the wheels turning, fight, run, deny. But he didn't get a chance. I pulled out a small body cam clip to my collar. Confession time, Ronan. We're recording. Want to save yourself or go down with Serena? He hesitated. Then cracked. It wasn't supposed to go that far, he said. She was supposed to scare the kid. Not hurt him. She panicked when he ran. Said it was cleanup time. Said if Mason talked, it would all fall apart. Jace leaned in. And what exactly is it? Ronan swallowed hard. The client contract. Data suppression deal. The board never knew. Serena brokered it off books. We got it all. Every name. Every detail. I walked out of that room knowing one thing. This wasn't just a family betrayal anymore. This was conspiracy. And we finally had them. The first time I saw Serena after the arrest was 6 weeks later in the Pima County Detention Facility. A room with 2 chairs, a scratched-up table, and a thick sheet of plexiglass between us. No cameras, no lawyers, just us. The past and the wreckage sitting across from each other. She looked smaller than I remembered. Gaunt. Pale. Her once flawless hair tied back sloppily, face free of the makeup she used to wear like armor. But her eyes? Still sharp. Still calculating. You came, she said, settling into the chair like it was a negotiation table. I had questions, I replied. She tilted her head. And you think I'll answer them? No, I said. But I need to ask anyway. She smirked faintly. Closure then? How noble. I stared at her for a long second before speaking. Why? Because I was done pretending, she said bluntly. You were content to live your quaint little life flying cargo across the country while I clawed my way up every rung just to keep us comfortable. I worked for people who didn't care if I collapsed as long as I delivered results. And you? You just disappeared into clouds. You think I was the one who disappeared? I asked. You left me behind, Owen. You and your screw-tight pilot life, your tinkering with drones and bedtime check-ins. Meanwhile, I was managing clients who made 10 times our income, watching everyone climb while I stood still. So you decided we were in your way? She didn't answer. You tried to end your own son's life, I said, leaning forward. That's not ambition. That's madness. Her jaw tightened. He wasn't supposed to be there that day. He overheard something he shouldn't have. Ronan panicked. I told him to scare Mason. Not hurt him. You told him it was cleanup time. A flicker of guilt, maybe? Or maybe just a crack in the performance. I wasn't always like this, she said quietly. No, I said. But you became it. And you buried the real Serena under the version you thought power needed. She looked away just for a second. I stood up. I'm not here for revenge. I just needed to see you for who you are. She glanced back up. And? You're not a monster, I said. You're just empty. I walked out without another word. And as the heavy door closed behind me, I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel rage. I felt peace. Not because I forgave her, but because I didn't need her to break any further. She'd already done it all by herself. The mornings are different now. Quiet in the right ways. The house doesn't echo with tension or secrets. Just the sound of coffee brewing and the software of motors as Mason moves through his physical therapy routines in the den. I retired from flying. Didn't announce it. Just quietly handed in my badge and declined the next rotation. I'd spent too many years 30,000 feet in the air missing things down here that I should have been seeing. That won't happen again. Most days I sit across from Mason as he works. He still has a slight limp and sometimes his hands shake when he holds the controller for too long. But he's getting stronger. Every day a little steadier. We rebuilt the drone together. Same model he was working on that night in his room. Only now it's fully restored, new stabilizer, polished shell, upgraded camera module. It's better than before. And in a strange way, so are we. You think it'll fly straight this time? Mason asked one morning, adjusting the blades. I grinned. Only one way to find out. He stood beside me on the back porch, controller in hand. His fingers hesitated just for a second before pressing the launch button. The drone lifted off smooth and steady, hovering in place like it was holding its breath. Mason watched it, eyes wide with quiet pride. We did it. We did, I said. Brielle stops by a few times a week. She brings lemon muffins, always warm, and teases Mason about his new haircut or the fact that he still can't beat her in chess. She's not just a nurse anymore. She's family. She's what real people look like when they don't need anything from you but your time. One afternoon, while we were all in the kitchen, my phone buzzed. It was a call from the prosecutor's office. Mr. Brandt, the voice said, just wanted to let you know charges against Serena and Ronan are holding. No bail? And the company's board? Dissolved. A criminal investigation is underway. I didn't say much. Just thanked them and hung up. Mason looked up from the counter. That them? Yeah, I said. It's over. He didn't say anything. Just nodded. But I could see it in his shoulders, the way he exhaled. Like a weight had finally lifted that wasn't his to carry. Later that evening we launched the drone again. Watched it climb into the dusk sky, steady and straight. Mason turned to me. Think we'll ever race again? Only if you're ready to lose, I said, nudging him. He laughed for the first time in weeks. A real one. Not tired or polite. Just his laugh. And standing there in the yard under a soft Arizona sky, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. Not for the past. Not for Serena. Not for what was lost. But for the future. For the kid beside me. And the flight still ahead.